लिए चलते हैं। वित्त मंत्री अरुण जेटली नई दिल्ली में संबोधित कर रहे हैं, एक कार्यक्रम में संबोधित करते हुए।
Rebalancing. India continues to grow at a robust pace. Russia and Brazil, who were in the negative growth territory in 2016, are expected to turn to positive in 2017 and 2018. Overall, the EMDEs are expected to contribute more than 3/4 of the total global growth in the current year. But there are newer challenges, most notably a possible shift towards inward-looking policy platforms and protectionism, a sharper than expected tightening of the global financial condition that could interact with the balance sheet weaknesses in parts of the euro area and increased geopolitical tensions, including unpredictable economic policies in the United States. Amidst these challenges lie the opportunities. The estimate unmet demand for infrastructure investment in the EMDs is estimated at about US $1 trillion a year by the World Bank. Most importantly, the EMDs need to carry out this huge investment in a substantial, sustainable manner. The establishment of the NDBs are now capital constrained, and with their overemphasis on the processes are unable to meet this financial challenge. A bank like the NDB is well poised to step into the void. Since the establishment of the NDB in September 2015, President Kamath and his team have done a commendable job. The formative years of an institution are never easy, and the NDB has navigated this challenge with flying colors. It is really heartening to know that the bank is now fully operational with 7 loans already approved by the Board of Governors. It has also successfully raised money from the market, and I'm sure will soon make the first disbursements in India. Setting up of an African regional center is also under active consideration. The growing importance of the NDB is evident from the impressive array of guests present here, including several heads of multilateral development banks. As the NDB moves on, it must be guided by its commitment and pledge of the global leaders in 2015 to a sustainable development goals and to mobilize the means required to achieve the SDGs through a revitalized global partnership. Incidentally, the NDB was also established at the same time with the core mandate to finance sustainable development projects. Therefore, if we remain committed to the core principles of the NDB, we shall also be contributing to the global consensus. NDB must also be alive to the role envisioned by its founding nations. It is an important vehicle for South-South cooperation. The 5 BRICS nations possess enormous amount of knowledge, technology and resources. There is a huge potential for every BRICS country to benefit from the collective body of knowledge and expertise. As a BRICS institution, the NDB should be at the forefront to facilitate the knowledge and the technology exchange. Now I shall say a few words as India's governor. Throughout this challenging time, India has remained as a bright spot amongst the major economies. As per the IMF's assessment in January 2017, India's growth in 2016 would be 6.6% and is projected to grow at 7.2% and 7.7% in 2017 and 2018. We have successfully implemented a slew of reform measures, including one of the largest currency reform initiatives ever implemented, which will move the Indian economy to a less cash trajectory, increase tax compliances, and reduce the threat from counterfeit currency. Other major initiatives include the merger of the railway budget with the general budget, passage of the landmark goods and services tax bill, enactment of a comprehensive insolvency and bankruptcy code 2016, liberalization of the FDI policy initiatives, and various facilitation measures to to improve the attractiveness and the competitiveness of India globally. India has a huge unmet need for investment in infrastructure, estimated to the tune of about rupees 43 lakh crores, which is about US dollars 646 billion over the next 5 years. 70% of this will be required in the power, roads and urban infrastructure sectors. Perhaps our Prime Minister expressed it in the most eloquent way when he said, India alone offers the opportunities that could rival those of the entire continent. It offers today the possibilities of a full century. And if we want to do all this in a cleaner, greener and a sustainable way, this offers an enormous opportunity to an institution like the NDB, whose core mandate is sustainable infrastructure development. I am happy to note that the first agreement for an NDB loan in India to finance the major district roads in Madhya Pradesh has been signed a couple of days back. With this, the NDB will have its first footprint in India. We have proposed projects worth about US dollars 2 billion for the NDB funding, which I do hope will be taken up by the board expeditiously. We shall work with the NDB to develop strong and shelf of projects in specific areas such as smart cities, renewable energy, urban transport including metro railways, clean coal technology, solid waste management and urban water supply. Now the NDB is at a crossroads, and today as governor we shall be deliberating on the bank's strategy for the next 5 years, including issues such as the bank's capital loan portfolio and the expansion of membership. The uniqueness of the NDB should lie in the faster loan appraisal, a lean organizational structure resulting in lower cost of loans, a variety of financing instruments including local currency financing, adoption of country systems wherever possible, and flexibility in responding to the needs of the clients. These are the elements which would make the NDB truly a new institution and make it distinct from other NDBs. Being a loan lean organization, it is also expected that the NDB will not only offer loans at cheaper rates, but will also influence the more established NDBs to revisit their high-cost model. Overall, it is our expectation that the bank will bring a whiff of freshness in the projects and the loan appraisals, as also will be nimble-footed to meet the expectation of its clients. Mr. President, I hope India will have a long, fruitful, intensive and mutually beneficial partnership with the NDB. I conclude with the hope that the NDB will emerge as a development bank representing the voice and the aspirations of the emerging developing nations, and will set a new trend in multilateral funding. Thank you very much, and once again, let me welcome all of you to the second annual meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Jaitley, for those remarks, wide-ranging remarks, and also the welcome extended to us. Also want to thank you and your Government of India for the kind hospitality that you have demonstrated to us during this time. It's now my great pleasure and honor to invite Mr. K.D. Kamath, the President of the New Development Bank, to deliver his address. Thank you.
Honorable Arun Jaitley, Finance Minister of India, for those welcoming comments and the encouragement that you have shown us. Your Excellencies, Minister of Finance of the People's Republic of China, Xiaoji, Minister of Finance of India, Arun Jaitley, distinguished board members, fellow presidents of NDBs, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the New Development Bank, it is now my privilege to welcome all of you to our second annual meeting in New Delhi. I especially thank the Government of India for hosting this annual meeting and the Minister of Finance for his tremendous support. Thank you all for being here with us today. I would like to touch upon 3 areas on which I'd like to share my thoughts with you. First, a brief recap of the past year. Second, my views in the current context in which we are operating. And third, how I see the bank evolving in the future, taking into account the progress thus far in the context in which we are operating. We began operations in July 2015. Since then, NDB has come a long way. We are focused on building the foundation of NDB. We have progressively put in place necessary policy and administrative structures to support our founders' vision and our commitment to green and environmentally friendly projects. This was indicated with the finance minister. 7 projects have been done so far. These aggregate to around $1.5 billion. 6 of these are in the renewable energy sector, while 1 finances transport connectivity. We signed our first loan agreement for a project in China December last year, which was funded in NDB. We began the process of providing local currency lending, which we believe is important for all our member countries. We have signed our second loan in India during this trip here. We received our first 2 rounds of capital on time, and in some instances ahead of schedule, signifying the great support of our shareholders. But of an approval to raise renminbi 10 billion, we raised renminbi 3 billion, equivalent to about $445 million, in our maiden bond issue in China, which was a green bond issue in the interbank market, making NDB the first multilateral financial institution to tap this market. We are grateful to the support of the government of China and the Ministry of Finance in particular. We have begun our recruitment process based on the principles of meritocracy and gender equality. Regular staff at all levels have started joining, and NDB is currently 75% strong, including all categories of staff. We are working towards opening our African regional center and set a target date of May this year for doing this. We have signed MOUs with a vast array of commercial banks and indeed the leading multilateral development banks. And we will today be signing a set of MOUs with some of the leaders who are here from the multilateral development banking world. I must acknowledge that in the first year we have found great support from our friends in the NDB world and in the commercial banking world, who have been very generous in sharing their knowledge, sharing their thoughts, sharing their people, so that we could get up to speed. Indeed, we are a lean organization. We will continue to be a lean organization, agile and nimble, and operating with great speed. Today, we operate in a context that is changing extremely rapidly. Technology is disrupting our landscape constantly with rapid obsolescence and dynamic cost structures. Let's take the case of solar power. Each time the world's solar power panel production doubles, the cost of panels falls by 26%. Since 2008, the cost of solar panels has fallen by 80%, which in turn has led to an exponential fall in renewable energy prices. The cost of generating electricity through renewable energy is now on par with generating energy from fossil fuels. The energy landscape is changing fast, and adoption of renewable energy technologies even faster. For example, India has tripled its solar capacity in less than 3 years. China is the world's leading renewable energy producer, with more than double the renewable energy capacity, the second largest producer in the United States. It has nearly 400 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity, including hydro. Solar panel production has increased 100 times since the last decade, 2014, and renewables now supply nearly a quarter of its electricity. This demonstrates what is possible, and this, to me, is a sharing of learnings that happen in a member country. Technology is also changing the speed of innovation, the speed of adoption, speed of disruption, and changing the business environment we operate in. For example, to reach 100 million users across the globe, it took 75 years for the telephone, 7 years for the internet, 4 years for the Facebook. And we are seeing time frames getting crunched all the time. In the coming years, artificial intelligence and machine learning will soon be embedded in our everyday life. Autonomous cars, hyperloop transportation systems, 3D printing will all impact us. The fourth industrial revolution, caused by the combination of digital and physical systems, is already upon us. Unlike the previous 3 industrial revolutions, the fourth is unfolding at an exponential rather than a linear pace. Developing countries already seeing the beginnings of this revolution, and they will both influence and be impacted by this disruption. So we need to ask ourselves, how do we align to these disruptions? How do we redesign traditional business models and operations for this new world so that we remain relevant? And while doing this, how do we build a green architecture? The infrastructure requirement of our members for the next decade are well documented. Trillions of dollars of investment needed. The infrastructure needs to be green, sustainable, climate resilient, reduced vulnerability to economic and environmental shocks. The infrastructure that we build today needs to enhance the economic, social, and environmental well-being of citizens. The requirements are huge, and to meet these, we need all institutions, public, private, multilateral, and bilateral, global, and national, to work together. What does all this mean to the bank? The world that NDB will operate in going forward is clearly set for dramatic change. As president of the bank, I ask myself, how do we meet our mandate of funding infrastructure and sustainable development in this new world? We would like to be an integral part of the solution to some of the key infrastructure development challenges facing our member countries. The fact that infrastructure has tremendous impact on economic growth and the economic well-being of the poor has been well established. With better infrastructure availability and connectivity, the poor have improved access to economic opportunities, education, and health facilities. To find evidence of how much of a positive role infrastructure plays in poverty reduction, we need to look no further than the bank's host country where we are housed, China. Over the past 25 years, globally, an average of 137,000 people were lifted out of extreme poverty every day, with China leading this remarkable transformation. The key element that underpins the China story is the development of massive infrastructure. We will work with our member countries to support technology-driven solutions that help develop infrastructure that contribute to sustainable development. In the coming year, we will further consolidate and strengthen our foundation. Our activities will be firmly guided by our founder's vision and our commitment to finance green and environmentally friendly projects. During the year 2017, NDB plans to present to the board about 15 projects for a total of about $2.5 to 3 billion across all our member countries. We will expand our suite of products from sovereign and sovereign guaranteed loans to include non-sovereign and private sector funding by the end of this year. We will innovate in terms of funding and lending. We will continue to explore fundraising opportunities in the local capital markets of our member countries as well as global capital markets. We will ensure that we maintain a conservative leverage ratio so as to obtain the highest possible credit rating in the best possible financing terms for our members. We will be a lean multilateral financial institution that leverages capabilities from various institutions instead of necessarily having to build expertise in-house. For our core staff, we will continue our recruitment process aimed at hiring bright, talented individuals with an emphasis on youth. We will continue to build capacity and skills in the institution and keep them current with investments in training and on-the-job learning. I'm well aware that the new opportunities that come up in the new context that we face will call for new thinking, new institutional structures, new products, new services, and new partner ecosystems. We will therefore partner with multilateral development banks, national institutions, and the private sector to leverage their knowledge flows and explore co-financing opportunities. We will listen, we will partner, and we will learn. I thank and express my deep appreciation to India for host for this second annual meeting. I would also like to thank our governors and our directors for the continued support and guidance that we have so far received, and I'm sure we will receive as we further build and strengthen the institution. Thank you all for being with us here today.
Thank you, President Kamath, for that overview, both of the past and an overview of where the bank is heading over the next year. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my great pleasure and honor to invite His Excellency the Minister of Finance from China, Minister Xiao Jie, to address us. Thank you.
尊敬的杰特利财长、各位理事、卡马特行长、女士们、先生们、朋友们，非常高兴来到历史悠久的文化名城新德里，与各位同事共同出席新开发银行第2届理事会年会。感谢印度政府和新开发银行为本届年会所做的周到安排。设立新开发银行是金砖国家合作进程中的重要里程碑。中国国家主席习近平先生指出，新开发银行的成立充分证明了金砖国家合作的有效性和行动力。要把新开发银行建设好，维护好发展，为发展中国家经济发展提供有力的保障。新开发银行开业运营1年多来，在各成员国的大力支持和卡马特行长的坚强领导下，以及全体员工的共同努力，圆满完成了建章立制、搭建组织架构等工作，并顺利启动了业务运营，得到了各国领导人的积极评价。当前，国际社会正在致力于实现2030可持续发展目标。新开发银行将构建可持续发展的未来作为本届年会的主题，充分彰显了新开发银行对支持可持续发展的坚定承诺。可持续发展首先是要实现发展。当今世界的许多问题，无论是贫困、疾病、灾害，还是战乱冲突、难民等问题，归根结底都是发展落后造成的，都需要通过发展寻求根本的解决之道。没有发展，可持续就是一句空话。发展必须可持续，而可持续又具有丰富的内涵。不可持续的发展，最终都将陷入停顿，或者是困顿。如果发展不平衡、不平等，贫富差距加剧，则不可能持续。如果发展方式粗放、高消耗、高污染，也不可能持续。如果经济社会发展不协调，同样也不可能持续。只有深刻认识和把握可持续的内涵，均衡全面推进各项事业，发展才能持久。实现可持续发展的关键是要采取切实的行动。2030年可持续发展议程不仅是一幅面向未来的蓝图，也是一张高标准的任务清单，更是一份沉甸甸的承诺书。国际社会要共同努力，落实发展资金，完善机制保障，优先聚焦核心业务，力争早日取得实效。女士们、先生们，当前世界经济增长的低迷态势仍然在延续，贫富差距、南北差距的问题更加突出，逆全球化思潮和保护主义倾向抬头，不稳定、不确定的因素增加。但是，我们也必须看到，和平发展、合作共赢仍然是当今国际社会的普遍愿望。新一轮科技革命和产业变革蓄势待发，创新与改革的潮流更加强劲，金砖国家合作的潜力 进一步增强，空间也进一步扩大。借此机会，我想对新开发银行未来的发展提出3点期望。第一，支持成员国探索多元发展道路。各国的国情不同，实现可持续发展的路径也不可能只是一种单一的模式。希望新开发银行在业务运营中坚持以客户的需求为导向，支持成员国走自主发展道路，制定符合自身特点的发展战略和规划，实现与可持续发展议程的有效对接。第二，助力提升南南合作水平。金砖国家各具先天禀赋和后发优势，合作的空间和潜力巨大。新开发银行作为金砖国家合作的重要务实成果，推动金砖国家加强宏观经济政策的协调，推动各领域合作齐头并进，以基础设施互联互通、国际产能合作等为突破口，打造一批具有战略和示范意义的精品项目，为南南合作增添新的动力。第三，积极参与全球经济治理体系改革。全球经济治理体系只有适应国际经济格局的变化，才能为实现可持续发展议程提供坚实保障。据统计，新兴市场和发展中国家对全球经济增长的贡献率已经达到了80%，但是其在全球经济治理体系中的发言权和代表性仍被严重低估。作为由全球主要新兴市场国家发起成立的多边开发机构，新开发银行应积极参与全球经济治理体系的改革，以切实提高新兴市场和发展中国家的发言权和影响力。女士们、先生们，中国作为世界上最大的发展中国家，一直是全球发展事业的坚定支持者和积极推动者，也是落实千年发展目标成效最为显著的国家之一。2016年，中国开始实施“十三五”规划，将经济社会发展的各项任务与2030年可持续发展议程的17项目标紧密结合起来。1年多来，中国政府积极推动经济社会持续健康发展，实现了“十三五”规划的良好推进。2016年，中国国内生产总值增长67%，对全球经济增长的贡献率超过了30%。当前，中国经济稳中向好的态势进一步显现，发展的质量和效益持续提升，经济结构优化升级，新旧动能接续转换加快。面向未来，中国将坚持走创新、协调、绿色、开放、共享的发展道路，以供给侧结构性改革为底线，推动经济社会朝着更高质量、更有效率、更加公平、更可持续的方向发展，为全球可持续发展做出新的贡献。最后，预祝新开发银行第2届理事会年会取得圆满成功。谢谢大家。
Thank you very much, Excellency Minister of Finance from China. It's now my pleasure to invite Mr. Marcelo Estival, the Secretary for International Affairs of the Ministry of Finance of Brazil, to address us. Marcelo.
Honorable governors of the NDB, distinguished President Ahmed and Vice Presidents, dear directors, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to be here. We returned to New Delhi 5 years after the BRICS leaders called for the Minister of Finances to examine the feasibility and viability of setting up a new development bank so that more resources could be mobilized for infrastructure and sustainable development projects. Those resources will supplement existing efforts from multilateral and regional financial institutions to boost global growth and close income gaps across countries. 5 years later, the new development bank is well poised to fulfill this mandate. Indeed, the first annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the NDB celebrated key achievements. The capital subscription by its 5 country founders, the establishment of policies and the first loan approvals, and initial bond issuance. These achievements put to rest most questions on the ability of the founders to undertake concrete cooperation initiatives. At this moment, we celebrate the efforts and hard work to reach agreements with a number of international and national development banks that will help advance NDB's capacity to operate more effectively. We also made significant progress in the NDB's governance structure, including in the area of risk analysis and compliance. Yet, I would like to reiterate the wishes governors expressed in previous speeches on the need to go fully global and to leverage private sector capital. The lack of appropriate infrastructure investment to boost economic development, which moved us to create the NDB in the first place, persists. To achieve sustainable development goals by 2030 and comply with the Paris Agreement, trillions of dollars in investment are needed, an amount that is too large to be obtained solely through public sector sources, be it national or international. Additionally, on membership, I would like to recall that the NDB's Articles of Agreement created a global institution. In fact, the bank is the first development institution of global character, established by emerging market economies. Consolidate its importance, however, requires a larger membership. The global economic scenario presents a unique opportunity for the bank to expand. The perception of unbalanced corporate governance in traditional multilateral development banks shall once more constrain the flows of development finance to emerging and developing countries, especially the upper middle income ones. This creates a fertile ground for a concerted outreach effort from all of us to prospective members. But why would the NDB be an enticing option for other countries to attain their investment needs? The NDB's attractiveness to other countries will depend on its ability to fulfill our proposal for a leaner, more flexible, more agile, well-structured infrastructure investment bank that is focused on its clients' needs. While with entering the NDB, new members will increase the menu of development funding sources. The benefits to us for larger membership are clear. The NDB would increase its capital basis and diversify its portfolio of projects. A large NDB shall also be a strong institution with a better credit rating and a more relevant position in the global architecture for development finance. I sincerely hope that when we come to our third annual meeting, we will be welcoming new members and celebrating enhanced cooperation for development. In concluding, I would like to thank President Kamath, Vice Presidents, and all the staff of the bank for their hard and impressive work today. And I would like to give a special thanks to our host, the Indian government, for their warm welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Escobar. It's now my great pleasure and honor to invite the Honorable Deputy Minister of Finance of the Russian Federation, Sergei Stochak, to address us. Thank you.
Dear governors, dear directors, Mr. President and Mr. Vice President, dear guests, friends, colleagues, I'm really very glad to be here with you at the second NDB annual meeting of Board of Governors. And I would like first of all to thank the Indian partners, the bank staff for choosing this particular hotel as place of the meeting. It's not my first visit to New Delhi, and I had a number of chances to be here in this particular hotel, and I think it's really have the features of feeling, smell of India, and it's very good not to be in just international hotels, but in Indian style one. Less than 2 years passed since our inauguration meeting in Moscow took place, and the progress of this institution in setting up this culture, style of working is obvious. I think the NDB management can be proud of work done. More than 30 policy documents were prepared and approved during this course of events. It's a really big job. We have in place a number of policies which will clearly support the activities of these institutions as new development bank, with special features of preparing the project and implementing the project. Please also note that we set up a fund, special fund for preparation of the project. It's really a big job, as we all know that with the benchmarks of being environmentally friendly, social, sustainable projects need to be carefully processed. And with this fund in existence, the job can be done more quickly and more efficiently. In Russia, we know with the satisfactions that the NDB has become a full-fledged participant in the so-called club of multilateral development banks. It's very important that the bank is developing comprehensive relationship not only with the global players, but regional multilateral development banks, which I hope would be good, reliable partners of our institutions in the coming years. We, of course, welcome the inaugural 3 billion yuan denominated bond issues on China debt markets. And we hope that this is going to be only at the beginning. And the Minister from India already said that as preparation of the second issue of debt instruments of our bank here on the Indian market. We believe that the fact that our institutions is going to be funded on local currencies and then run loans in local currencies would be one of the main features of our institutions, which would be in the interest of founding members and new members as well. Today, we are going to discuss the first strategy of our bank for the coming 5 years. It goes without saying that the adoption of this document would play a very important role in setting up the philosophy, business plans, things like this of our institution. And it is very important that we have in our strategy the ideas and wishes expressed by our leaders during last years to that the strategy reflect the BRICS forum as one player, one very important player in the global economy, and as just it was said here from this tribune, the bank would participate actively in reforming of the global governance. I think it's a must to reflect such kind of approach in this document as well. To conclude, I'd like to highlight that the first 2 years of NDB operation were marked by considerable progress achieved by the staff and with the active participation in this work by the board of directors. We moved quickly, we take reasonable risks, and on the basis of this, I hope that our institutions would become an example of deep, precise, comprehensive cooperations between developing and emerging markets. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister Stochak. It's now my pleasure to invite Mr. Bonale Rathoma, the Deputy Director General responsible for economic policy in the National Treasury of South Africa, to address us. Thank you.
Governors of the New Development Bank, President of the NDB and Vice Presidents, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I bring warm regards from South Africa. It is a great honor to address the second annual meetings of the NDB, especially considering that it was just 5 years ago when the BRICS leaders gave the Ministers of Finance a mandate to explore the viability and feasibility of establishing a BRICS-led new development bank. Perhaps this occasion is made more special by the fact that New Delhi played host to the first negotiations of the establishment of the NDB. Ladies and gentlemen, we are currently witnessing considerable strain on traditional systems of trade and global cooperation that is of crisis proportions, also threatening an already very fragile global economy. This crisis, however, presents an opportunity for BRICS countries to assume a critical role of providing a counter-narrative, a narrative of trade, collaboration, and resolve to steer the next phase of a global economic upturn. It is time for BRICS countries to lead. We need this leadership because it's mainly our people in developing countries that have not enjoyed decades-long global trade expansion as winners-takes-all tendencies dominated and exploited. Society has become increasingly frustrated. Poverty, inequality, and unemployment remain critical fault lines in the countries that we represent. The need for economic development and economic inclusion cannot be overemphasized in the countries that we represent. Correctly, we have identified, amongst others, that resolving infrastructure constraints is very critical in creating an enabling environment for economic growth as a means to improving social inclusion and reversing economic injustices. The NDB's vision for infrastructure is clear. It describes our mission, it describes our field of work, and this must remain our key principal preoccupation. Back home in Africa, the infrastructure gap is estimated at around $100 billion a year. Regrettably, available financing can only cover half of this gap, or half of this challenge. The combination of years of underinvestment and exploitation has meant that African roads and railways were mainly designed and built to facilitate transportation of raw minerals and resources to markets outside the continent. The consequences have been devastating. Inter-African trade is shockingly low at approximately 11%, whereas inter-Asian and North American trade is both at average of 40%. Intercontinental trade in Europe sits at a very impressive 60%. The benefits of infrastructure investment in fostering economic growth and jobs are beyond contestation. Similarly, the benefits of infrastructure investment in relation to the provision of basic services, energy, health, education, sanitation are also critical. It is for this reason that we have fully embraced the German leadership of the G20 in putting Africa top of the agenda with a compact with Africa geared at facilitating infrastructure financing. We are looking forward to also hosting G20 members at the World Economic Forum on Africa, which will be hosted in Durban early May in South Africa, where work on this compact will be further advanced. Ladies and gentlemen, South Africa also embraces the emphasis on sustainable development adopted by the New Development Bank. In keeping up with this principle, we should collectively ensure that the infrastructure we facilitate does the following. It connects domestic and regional markets, it facilitates industrialization and local beneficiation, it stimulates productivity and consequently financial sustainability, and encourages diversification of economies and thereby reducing vulnerability to commodity price shocks. In this regard, the discussion on expanding the membership of the NDB is timely and necessary. The financing of regional projects, the use of country systems, and the commitment to quick turnaround time to approve projects is what will differentiate the NDB from others. I wish to reiterate the government of South Africa's commitment towards operationalizing the African Regional Center. Together with the NDB headquarters, the South African government is working on launching the offices as soon as possible. We are looking forward to finalization of the appointment of the head of the African Regional Center to start pioneering ways of expediting the identification of projects and approval, as well as being instrumental in facilitating discussions between the bank and potential members in the African continent when the admission of the new members finally commences. There is growing interest from the African countries to join the bank. The operationalization of the African Regional Center will be instrumental in realizing the dream of bringing this development bank established by developing countries to Africa. There is also great expectations from the Regional Center in terms of its potential capacity to significantly contribute to addressing infrastructure investment backlog in the continent of Africa. Finally, to you, Mr. Kamal, and your staff, congratulations in producing a very good set of results at such a very short or very early stage of the bank's operation. I wish to highlight three principles that I believe will future-proof our institution. Firstly, the bank must stay true to its original aims. Secondly, the development bank must always be new, as the name implies. Thirdly, cooperation, partnership must remain the primary paradigm for the NDB in its developmental actions. I see great days ahead of the new development bank as long as it stays true to its aims and values, and as long as it continuously reinvents itself in line with the need of its constituents. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Atsoma. Ladies and gentlemen, we're very honored today to have amongst the distinguished guests with us several of the leadership of the multilateral development banks, several presidents of multilateral development banks. So I'd like to ask the president of the European Investment Bank, Mr. Werner Hoyer, to come and make some remarks. Thank you.
Governors, ministers, Mr. President, colleagues and friends, it's a pleasure and honor for me to be here with you today to celebrate the second annual meeting and to celebrate the success story to which we were witness from the beginning. It is an exciting journey to set up such a big bank for a number of important countries in this world and put it in place in such a record time, so far, let's say, without accidents. That's a miracle in itself. So I'd like to thank the government of India for the hospitality extended to all of us. It's a pleasure and honor to be here today. Ladies and gentlemen, I come from a small town in the center of Europe, Luxembourg. And would you not be political figures or politically interested figures, you would have problems finding it on the map. But I can tell you, coming from a small town in the center, in the heart, core of the European Union, you develop a certain sense of humility. You need to be humble. If you want to establish a bank like yours, Mr. Kamat, which is going to be lean. It is easy to be lean and to become lean when starting the bank. It is quite a challenge to remain lean. And I can tell you that we suffer from this temptation each and every day, and fending off aspirations to become bigger in staff, in costs, and everything connected to it is unsurmountable sometimes. So I wish you all the best. We are operating a balance sheet of $600 million and annual lending volume of $90 million with 3,500 staff. And that brings you to a limit when it comes to making a quantum leap in the size of an institution. And you might have to bring in new structures, procedures in order to be able to remain lean. We admire what you have setting up, and we have been lending our hand from the beginning. We will continue to do so, but not in the sense that we believe you should learn from us, maybe from our mistakes. But we are also eager to learn how to do something like this in you. Sometimes when you operate a bank that is now 60 years old, you would like to have a situation where you could set up something from scratch. Learn from the mistakes of the past and do it in the perfect way now. Well, you have the opportunity now, and we wish you all the success with it. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this second annual meeting of NDB is building a sustainable future. I would like to address the role that multilateral development banks play in order to support the achievement of sustainable development goals of the United Nations. At a time when we are confronted by a growing insularity in the political discourse of some politicians, it is not always easy to make the case for multilateralism. But faced with growing inequality, unprecedented shifts in demographics, climate change, political instability around the world, the need for multilateral action and effective support for global sustainable development and growth has never been greater. And the more this is being put into question, the more we must close our eyes. For an institution like ours, it is important to know that at the heart of the proposed European Union's new consensus on development is a recognition that development and finance must work hand in hand. behind that, there is a certain paradigm change in development policy. Because development was for too long seen as something that has to do with donations or granting something, not in terms of cooperation and mobilizing forces of societies in order to be helpful in developing development. Compared to the considerable needs, notably in sustainable infrastructure, but also in view of the goals we all subscribe to proudly at COP21 in Paris, available public resources are scarce and must, as such, be used wisely to ensure the maximum and optimal impact. As a result, loans, guarantees, and financial instruments from multilateral development banks, international financial institutions, and national development and promotional institutions need to be increasingly used to mobilize, catalyze, and leverage private resources and foster more sustainable models of development. In order to achieve these goals, a lot needs to be done on many fronts, namely by putting in place the right policies and regulatory frameworks at the international and national levels, creating the right environment for investment, and continuing to provide necessary assistance and financing to get the investments implemented. Moreover, at the EU Bank, we fully support the SDGs approach to consider climate action and development as inextricably linked. Since climate action impacts developed countries most, climate action investment is an urgent dimension of development policy, and we should not get irritated on that. In this sense, for example, if the largest provider, multilateral provider of climate finance worldwide, and the first and still today the largest issuer of green bonds, at the COP21 meetings in Paris, the EU Bank committed that 35% of all lending outside the European Union will be for climate action investments. Pursuing the achievement of sustainable development goals, the EU Bank is surely and proudly not alone, as we work in close cooperation with peer international financial institutions, to which we welcomed NDB last year, as well as, of course, with national and promotional and development institutions. Indeed, we strongly value these partnerships, to which each institution brings its own experience and comparative advantage, and we stand ready to cooperate more closely to make sure that we all use our capacities to promote sustainable development. Multilateral cooperation plays an important role in spurring international efforts, for example, through the development of new initiatives, the definition of common environmental and social standards, or the joint involvement in large investments. With this objective in mind, later this morning we will sign a memorandum of understanding with the New Development Bank, which confirms our resolve to cooperate in infrastructure, environment, and sustainable development projects. To conclude, at a time when crises are not only humanitarian and social ones, but also have a global economic dimension, we must together provide an effective economic response. As such, it is essential that we recognize that our collective effectiveness is directly linked to our ability to develop synergies amongst ourselves, enhance knowledge sharing, and foster stronger institutional and operational collaboration. We look forward to further strengthening our cooperation with NDB, which we congratulate on its achievements so far, and we wish every success for this annual meeting in New Delhi. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hoyle, for your fitting remarks. It's now my pleasure to invite the President of the Africa Development Bank, Dr. Adesina, to address us. Welcome, sir.
Your Excellency, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Secretary of India, the Minister of Finance of China, President Kamath of the New Development Bank, governors of the New Development Bank, my colleagues, President Hoyer, who just spoke of the European
EIB, my dear brother Suma Shabrakati of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I thank President Kamal of the New Development Bank for inviting me and the rest of our colleagues to this second annual general meeting of your bank. I would like to congratulate you and your team for the speedy takeoff of the New Development Bank and for already approving $1.5 billion in projects, some of them in Africa. Your investments in Africa are welcome, in fact, very welcome. I encourage you to do more. Africa needs all the support in its drive to accelerate its growth and development. Despite the tough global economic environment, African countries continue to post resilient growth. The African Development Bank's revised estimates show that African economies grew 2.2% in 2016, better than 1.7% projected earlier. Growth is expected to rise to 3.4% this year, but the average does not tell the true picture. Indeed, 12 African countries grew by over 5% in 2016, and 20 African countries grew between 3 to 5%. That's a remarkable performance in a global environment dragged down by recession. Africa's head is above the waters in a world of global recession. I am optimistic about Africa. Africa beckons with boundless opportunities. There's no doubt that the future belongs to Africa. Just think about it. By 2050, Africa will have the same population as China and India combined today, with rising consumer demand from a growing middle class. The cities will be booming. The numbers of urban cities, with populations of millions of people, will rise. If we harness these potentials together very well, Africa will be unstoppable. That's the future we must together work on, and do so with a greater sense of urgency. Nowhere, ladies and gentlemen, is the need for this strategic partnership between our organizations greater than on the issue of infrastructure, which is at the heart of why the New Development Bank was created. At the top of the list is electricity. Some 645 million Africans do not have access to electricity. We're determined to change this quickly. That's why the African Development Bank launched a new deal on energy for Africa. Our goal is to help to achieve universal access to electricity within 10 years. We have rolled out our work to invest $12 billion in the energy sector over the next 5 years and to leverage $45 to $50 billion from the private sector. We plan to connect 130 million people to the grid system, 75 million people through the off-grid system, and provide 150 million people with access to clean energy. The African Development Bank is also at the forefront of renewable energy and off-grid revolution in Africa. We host the African Renewable Energy Initiative, jointly developed with the G7 and the African Union, that has attracted $10 billion in investment commitments from G7 and European Union. I'm very pleased that the New Development Bank is invested in the energy sector, especially in the renewable energy sector. And I would like to invite you to join us in this huge task to light up Africa together. We must close Africa's $50 billion infrastructure financing gap. And to do so, mobilization of domestic resources will play a major role. Pension funds in Africa today is projected to reach $1.3 trillion by 2025. Already tax revenues have exceeded $500 billion per year. Sovereign wealth funds in Africa stands at $164 billion. To attract significant investments by these institutional investors, there's a lot of work for us to do together to make sure that infrastructure becomes an asset class. And that's why the African Development Bank will launch later this year the Africa Investment Forum. The goal is to leverage African and global pension and sovereign wealth funds into investments in Africa. We need to accelerate the development together of tangible projects that can attract these investments. And that's why the African Development Bank has launched the Africa 50, a new infrastructure entity now capitalized by African countries to the tune of $865 million to help to accelerate infrastructure, project development, and project finance. We've also partnered with Exim Bank of India and others to establish Kukuza Company based in Mauritius to help to develop and support PPP infrastructure development and finance. Private sector financing for infrastructure needs to expand. That's where I also think our two banks can work together. For that to happen, we need to help to reduce risks, especially project finance, market, and political risks. The African Development Bank helps by de-risking investments for public and private sectors through partial risk guarantees and partial credit guarantees. We have used this instrument successfully to help mitigate risks for the concentrated solar power project in Morocco, the largest in the world. We have done the same for Lake Turkana wind farm in Kenya, the largest wind farm in Africa, among several others. It's now time to scale up guarantee facilities. Larger co-guarantee facilities pulled across the multilateral development banks will help to speed up and to scale up much-needed infrastructure investments in Africa. Let's do more together for Africa. That vision of mine is already happening here in India. You can have right here the presidents of 4 multilateral development banks. We're here to support our friends. There's something also I must say in this finance for India about India and annual meetings. And we'll be having our own annual meeting just on the 22nd to 26th of this month in Ahmedabad. The first that we're going to be having in India, and I hope several of you will be able to join us there so that we can continue the conversation in Ahmedabad. It's great to be here. I'd like to wish my brother, President Kamath, and every one of you a very successful annual meeting. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adesina, for your remarks and warm wishes. It's now my pleasure to invite the President of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, Sir Suma Chakrabarti, to address us. Sir.
Honourable NDB governors, directors, President Kamath, NDB vice presidents, fellow NDB presidents, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and friends. It's really, as Werner said, it's a real honour and a pleasure to be here with you today, both in India and at the NDB second annual meeting. As someone who's spent much of my career in the field of development, India's transformation, as well as that of other emerging markets over the last few decades, I think sets a great example. And on a personal level, as someone who was born in one of these emerging markets, here in a provincial town in West Bengal, India, I'm extremely proud to see not only the economic rise of these countries, but also to see the active role they're increasingly playing in shaping the multilateral agenda. I'm also very proud of this from a professional perspective, as at the EBRD, we work now in a number of very important emerging economies. And for all of these reasons, I was personally extremely supportive of the establishment of the NDB. And we at the EBRD were also very supportive of the changes to global governance that the creation of the NDB presents. Our two banks have much more in common than might at first meet the eye. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development was set up to invest in what was then the centrally planned economies of Central and Eastern Europe, the former Soviet Union, as they made their transition to the free market. But since then, EBRD's shareholders, which come from all 5 continents, not just Europe, have been keen for us to apply our business model in other emerging markets. And we're delighted, really delighted, to have 2 BRICS shareholders. Russia has been an important shareholder of ours right from the start, and the youngest shareholder of our bank is in fact China. It only joined last year, but its membership represents an important milestone for us. It means that the shareholding of a globally owned multilateral institution like the EBRD is beginning to better reflect today's world economy. And the EBRD and NDB, we've got other things in common as well. Sustainable development has always been a priority for us. and sustainable infrastructure in particular, just as it is the NDB. Now, these very many common strands have ensured that we at the EBRD have been conducting intense and wide-ranging dialogue with the NDB ever since its launch. We've been talking to the NDB about strategies, about policies, about governance, about business models, about procurement, about evaluation. And we're very, very keen to continue to exchange ideas and learn from NDB's experience as well. Now, I mentioned earlier how India is now contributing so much more to the global development agenda. That agenda itself, ladies and gentlemen, that's been changing. In fact, its priorities are now much closer to the core competences of institutions such as the NDB and EBRD. I think it's most clearly seen in the composition of the Sustainable Development Goals that we all signed up to some 18 months ago. Overall, the SDGs emphasize the underlying drivers of sustainable development, not just outcomes. Several focus on the economy and in particular developing infrastructure in the fields of energy, industry, innovation and sustainable cities, as well as infrastructure as a means of boosting economic growth. And the SDGs also seek to address climate change. In fact, it's difficult really to separate the two. The infrastructure we build today has to be sustainable. And in parallel with this new emphasis on sustainable infrastructure, there is growing recognition that the investment we need to finance it cannot be delivered by the public sector alone. Importantly, and I think in a very significant shift in the consensus of the past, there is now widespread acceptance that much of this investment will have to come from the private sector. And working with the private sector has, of course, been at the core of the EBRD's business model ever since we were created a quarter of a century ago. In fact, today, around 80% of our annual lending is to the private sector. And over two-thirds of the more than 22 billion euros that we've invested in green energy over the last decade, over two-thirds of that has been in the private sector. Now, I understand that private investment in sustainable infrastructure is another area in which the NDB will be building up its operations, and we're very, very eager to help you enhance your capacity for such activity. As the NDB expands its operations, its scope, the number of areas in which we can work together will, of course, increase as well. This will further strengthen the overall architecture of the multilateral development bank system. I believe very strongly that that system performs best when different institutions can work closer together while also making the most of our respective strengths. So, ladies and gentlemen, we at EBRD, we're really very, very excited at the prospect of working with new MDBs like the NDB. The Memorandum of Understanding that I'll be signing with President Kamath later is another important step towards even fuller and more fruitful collaboration between our two banks. We wish the NDB every success in your venture at the second annual meeting, but beyond as well. We'll be following the NDB's progress with great interest, and we stand ready to continue helping in any way we can, but also with humility to learn from your new experiences. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sir Bharati, for your remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, that completes the sort of formal remarks today. We will now transition into a signing ceremony. So I'd like to urge you to remain in your seats during this time as we transition to the second part of this opening ceremony. The New Development Bank Articles of Agreement makes provision or specifically directs us to mobilize resources for infrastructure, finance and sustainable development projects in BRICS countries as well as other emerging markets. And to this end, our articles direct us to complement the efforts of existing multilateral development banks as well as regional and national development banks. To this end, over the last 18 months, we have collaborated very actively with many of these institutions. You have heard from the leadership of several of these institutions here this morning. We have also, over the last 18 months, signed a memorandum of understanding with institutions like IBRD, the World Bank, if you like, the Asian Development Bank, and so on. We are pleased today to sign 5 more memoranda of understanding, and we will proceed now into these signing ceremonies. and I will invite the specific individuals up as soon as we are set up here. The first memorandum that we would like to sign will be with the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and we will, in the next minute or so, ask President of NDB, Mr. Kamak, as well as Suma Chakrabarti to come back onto the stage, as well as the assistants with the actual agreements to come forward to allow us to officiate and have them signed. Mr. Kamak, if I could invite you, as well as Chakrabarti and the assistants to come forward. Thank you very much, Chakrabarti. And Mr. Kamak, you can remain here. Ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, whilst we're signing these agreements today, the spirit of these agreements are really very much captured with the fact that we are working very actively with these institutions. We would like to move on now to the second agreement with the European Investment Bank. And I would like to invite the President of the European Investment Bank, Mr. Bernard Hoyer, to come back on the stage. Thank you very much, Mr. Hoyer. Thank you very much, Mr. Hoyer. And Mr. Kamak, you can also take your seat. I would now like to invite the Vice President from New Development Bank, Paulo Nogueira Batista, Vice President and Chief Risk Officer, also responsible for economic research and strategy partnerships for the bank, as well as Sir Danny Alexander, Vice President and Corporate Secretary of Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, to sign the Memorandum of Understanding between the NDB and the AIIB. Thank you very much, Danny Alexander. Thank you very much. Paul, if you can remain here, and Danny, thank you very much. would like to invite Mr. Konstantin Lutovsky, Vice President and Deputy Chairman of the Managing Board of the Eurasian Development Bank, to come and join Mr. Batista to sign the agreement between our two institutions. Thank you very much, Mr. Lutovsky. Again, all of you can remain here. I would like now to ask Mr. Denis Ivanov, the Deputy Chairman of the Bank, on the Board of International Investment Bank, to sign the MOU between NDB and the IIB. Mr. Batista. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of the formal proceedings of the opening ceremony, the end of our second annual meeting. And we would like to thank you all for attending and joining us here today. We will be inviting you to the Ronds for a lunch which will be served immediately after the ceremony. And then I would like to ask the signatories of the respective documents as well as the governors, they could go to the room here on the left to ask you to show photographs. Thank you very much.